Hi, I'm nervous, and today we are going to have another nervous breakdown, all surrounding the tweets by Leon Riskin, the composer, who has been seemingly teasing an upcoming FNAF project.
Hey there, before continuing to watch this video, be sure to read this disclaimer. Thanks!
I am going to be referring to these as the Into the Abyss teasers, as that seems to be the most common name used among the fandom. I know other theorists have covered this already, but this is my first time diving into the entirety of the project, so what we're going to do is go over everything that's on the Twitter page right now, and then I'm going to give my thoughts. So I'm going to do my best to get a good rundown of this, and you're going to go along with that with me, because I want you to see everything as well and leave your thoughts in the comments as we go. I also don't know how many more videos, tweets, etc. that Leon Riskin is going to put out before announcing the project, and because we recently got a full video teaser, I thought that was a good time to actually just go through every single one of these tweets. I've been thinking about it a lot lately because of a Tales story that I recently read that I may, talk about some as we go through all of this, but I'll definitely be making, of course, one of my Tales series videos on that story next, so look forward to that as well. I also am going to have a question for all of you at the end of this video, so don't skip to the end, but when you are at the outro portion, make sure you listen because I do have a question for you. I'm not going to make this intro any longer, but I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who tuned into my Poppy video last week. It's always nice when a non-FNAF video does well because there are a lot of series that aren't FNAF that I really do want to talk about, but I do, tend to worry about the old algorithm. So we're back to FNAF today. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we're going to get into the video. So I have the tweets pulled up here, and it's in light mode. Don't shoot me. I don't care. So first teaser is this is where I am going to be starting is September 18th, 2025, where it says for the first teaser for the project, forgotten names and faces. That feels like the kickoff of all of this. So there are some things before this that do still kind of sort of feel a little bit suspicious, but because this says first teaser from the project, I'm going to assume that this is where this all begins. And you'll notice already before we even listen to this, Forgotten Names and Faces is the name of the project. And of course, that spells FNAF, right? Elegant Surrender is what is right underneath, and the hashtag say who will catch you when you fall into the abyss. And of course, Into the Abyss also caught a lot of people's attention back in September when this all started. Before we move on to the next, of course, we're going to listen to this, and I'm also going to look at some of the comments. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to listen to this. This is going to give you a good rundown of every single thing that is in the Leon Riskin tweet saga. I'm going to try really hard to create chapters for every single post so that way you guys have a quick guide to every single one of them. But first, okay, I assume it reminded you of something. If that is your first time listening to this, I assume that it reminded you of something, but just in case. The Princess Quest theme is heavy in that piece. Of course, there is somebody here, call me Sebi, who is pointing out the Princess Quest 4 motif, the name spells out FNAF, and of course, Into the Abyss is also present in the Princess Quest 4 title. We know that we're on to something here, that we're at the beginning of something here, but we'll move right on to September 19th, a day later, where Leon Riskin says no more obvious hashtags except credit to Tom Woodliff. And it says, in deepest, darkest depths of my despair, I find myself without a saving grace. A pendulum of pain prevents my prayer from rising upward through the dead of space. Now, this is an excerpt from a poem. Of course, Sebi again, and with the good details. This is an excerpt from a poem released in 2023 titled Abyss. So we're right back into the Abyss talk here. It details a speaker describing an ongoing inner struggle and guilt about the past. In the end, the speaker is trapped within an emotional confine after a ruined relationship with somebody. I will go and read the entire thing, but this is one of the ones that I went over with my chat when they were like, nervous, you've got to look into this stuff. And we were discussing the entirety of the poem, but ultimately my chat made a really good point that the poem excerpt that we're being given here may be more important to look at. And I say that because what we were speaking about in chat is who is the perspective of this poem written from? Whose perspective is this poem written from if we are connecting it to Five Nights at Freddy's? When you read just this piece of the poem, it could refer to more people, whereas I feel personally, when you read the entire poem, there's one very specific person that the poem could refer to. So one thing I'm going to pose to you is, do you think that we should be taking the poem in its entirety into consideration here, or should we leave it to very specifically this piece? So this is the entire poem, and please ignore these stupid ads. I don't have an ad block installed on this computer yet. That's my bad. But the one thing that's very interesting about this is this isn't an old poem. This is from 2023. And the reason this might be significant is because both the games Help Wanted 2 and Security Breach Ruin were released in 2023. That could obviously be a coincidence, but I think it's pretty cool at the very least that the poem Abyss was released the same year that we got the DLC for Security Breach and Help Wanted 2. So let me read the entire poem for you now, if you haven't already paused and read it yourself and left all your comments. In deepest, darkest depths of my despair, I find myself without a saving grace. A pendulum of pain prevents my prayer from rising upward through the dead of space. Within these walls, a war where no one wins repeats itself just like a worn-out rhyme. No swain should e'er succumb to swinish sins, for he who does the crime must do the time. And yet there was a time I loved her true, and in those days we dreamt without restraint. These merry memories now make me rue a life I should have lived with more constraint. For now I dwell inside this cursed abyss, a mournful soul who misses her sweet kiss. Now, if you read this entire poem and do not get Edwin vibes, I don't know, dude. I just think it's so perfect for Edwin's life. And if you don't believe me, let's start from the beginning and go down to the end here. In deepest, darkest depths of my despair, I find myself without a saving grace. A pendulum of pain prevents my prayer from rising upward through the dead of space. So this, first of all, this is what Leon Riskin is quoting in the tweet, but also it really gives somebody who has major regrets, right? Somebody whose agony, for all intents and purposes, weighs them down so heavily. And I find myself without a saving grace, for me, also really shows just how alone this person is. And if it is about Edwin, how he no longer has the company, he doesn't have his son, he doesn't have his wife, he doesn't have any of those friends. Like he, if William and Henry either or were his friends, they are also gone. And he doesn't even have his inventions because the mimic at this point in our timeline has fully turned on him. Within these walls, a war where no one wins repeats itself just like a worn out rhyme that feels so haunting. For me, it really evokes imagery of Secret of the Mimic, the way that the manor and Edwin's mansion are kind of stuck in time, that this and mimic repeating itself. You are in this manor and you are in this home and you hear this you hear this robot who is mimicking, who is repeating things it's heard from the past. There are all these what do you call them? The recording things, that cassette. Oh my God. There are like the tapes and stuff that you can play that are on the wall. I don't know why my brain is like mush and this trying to come up with the exact word for these, but that's his diary, okay? For all intents and purposes, it's Edwin's diary, okay? His diary entries are found throughout these old conversations with Fiona and F10, these conversations with his son, everything. That, like, it literally is like this echo of this horrible series of events, right? No swain should e'er succumb to swinish sins, for he who does the crime must do the time. So this is someone who obviously feels very guilty for the things that he has done and would even consider them sins. And no swain should e'er succumb to swinish sins is talking about how he's like, my lover, my loved one shouldn't have like paid the price for what I did. And that really harkens back to Fall Fest for me. Like, this line in particular really feels like my wife died and it was my fault. And for he who does the crime must do the time. Like, he feels guilty for her going to Fall Fest and dying. That's how I read that. You could also say she succumbed, whatever, it doesn't matter, to his sins from the fact that he ended up building the Mimic, the first one, and F10 was his sort of proxy wife, and it's like, it was like a further perversion of her image. So you could also say that that was the sin. And yet there was a time I loved her true, and in those days we dreamt without restraint is so Edwin and Fiona coded, like, let's go. These merry memories now make me rue, a life I should have lived with more constraint also feels so heavily Edwin coded. You can say again that we should only be focusing on this top paragraph here, but if we like look through all of this, he's like, if I had been able to be happy with what I had, if I had been able to slow down, just like she told him to, maybe you would still be here and maybe our family would still be together and happy. You know, I don't even like thinking of the happy memories that we had because I feel so much shame and guilt over the life I lived without constraint. For now, I dwell inside this cursed abyss, a mournful soul who misses her sweet kiss. This to me could mean a few things. One, in Secret of the Mimic, we know that the update added a shadowy figure that could be hinting at the idea of Edwin still being alive. I don't believe we have any confirmation that it is Edwin. It's just very heavily suspected to be Edwin. So there is maybe a chance that he lived, but regardless, whether he is alive by the events of Secret of the Mimic or not, in my opinion, this could very well be alluding to the idea that, similar to the way we theorized about Fiona's memories or her consciousness in some capacity still being present throughout the manor, this could be alluding to the fact that Edwin has gone through some kind of similar process where maybe he has crossed over, naturally, and, his memories are now just a part of the building, like he's haunting it, so to speak. Or it could mean he put himself through some kind of process. Similarly to we see in the future this digital consciousness transference. That's something that's referenced in Help Wanted 2, and what I believe is what's going on with not only Vanessa, but could be happening to Cassie as well, and may very well have happened to Gregory. It's also something that I suspect is happening in a lot of the Tales stories, even though now it's pretty well confirmed that those are not taking place in the game's timeline. I do believe you can still use the books to talk about like how this world works, and that is like one big thing, is like, think that personally I believe that a lot of the stories and tales are giving us a hint to digital consciousness transference. But anyway, if we go back to this, just looking at the tweet itself, I do want to stress that the same thing that my audience said, which was maybe we shouldn't be looking at the entirety of the poem, but that we should just focus in on this line, because this is a lot more general and could very easily apply to a lot of other characters. Of course, you hear my bias towards Edwin in this, but in deepest, darkest depths of my despair, I find myself without a saving grace. A pendulum of pain prevents my prayer from rising upward through the dead of space could just by itself very easily apply to Cassie. We know the last that we left Cassie, she was falling from a great height. And this says, in the deepest, darkest depths of my despair. Like, this would be the deepest, darkest depths. And she would be quite very much in a deep despair. And she's also, and this is also referencing that something, right? This pain is preventing prayer from rising upward through the dead of space. So something is preventing her from going up. The elevator would be sending her down. she finds herself without a saving grace. Gregory betrayed her. Like, from at this point in the story, she would feel totally without trust. If you just look at this piece alone, I think it could very well easily apply to Cassie. So I'm going to leave it to you. Do you think that we should only be looking at this one piece here, or should we take the whole poem in its entirety, where it's going to, in my opinion, apply very, very specifically to Edwin? Luckily, no music that we need to listen to for this one. But moving on to the very next one is September 29th. This is Passive Aggressive, one of my favorites, with an extra O in here. Just calling that out. It could very easily be a typo, but favorites from Freddy in Space 2. It's basically one filtered synth for the most part. Sometimes while brainstorming, you find a preset and it's all there. All the pieces and ends. Pure bottled anger. That's interesting. You'll also see that there are some red letters and some black letters in this. And I haven't been able to decipher if that is anything. It may be the beginnings of a code that we don't have all of it yet, or we will find all of it as we go through these tweets. But we're just going to listen to this, and I don't really have a whole lot to say about this one. I'm going to be really honest, but we're going to listen to it anyway, just so that way you guys have a full point of reference for everything going on in this ARG. Now you have that. And one thing I will say before we go on to the next is that the black letters are IVEAREIN, which are all words in their own right, Ive, R, and in. But obviously, as you can tell, they don't really spell anything. But I do want to point them out because it very well may be something that becomes important later. And of course, if you tell me like, hey, whenever Leon like originally uploaded this was the exact same way, it just kind of seems like his vibe. Fair enough. Somebody in the comments did point out that essive is a type of cipher or something, but I'm having trouble exactly finding that in the comments right now. Just a lot of, memeing. I would need more for me to even like look into something like that. But what I really am interested in talking about is where it just says pure bottled anger, all the pieces and ends, pure bottled anger, because that is sounding like agony/remnant to me. I think that goes along with a lot of stuff that I've been saying about the Pizzaplex being run on Remnant. Of course, most of you probably who are watching this by now have watched that video, but I'm going to mention it like all the time anyway. And yeah, I'm working on part 2. Here's the problem with it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now because I keep saying like, I'm working on it. The problem is I'm trying to make 2 videos in one video without people only watching half the video because I want to prove Remnantplex without using the books at all and then be like, but the books make it abundantly obvious. Like I want people to be sold on it without the books at all, especially now that Tales Games is absolutely out of the question, unless there's like alternate realities that we're dealing with. I just don't want to think about it. But that one letter, you know what I'm talking about. I got to point this way. It's on the screen. That letter gets me suspicious. But for the most part, I think that we're probably looking at Tales being something that is extraneous and not attached. But I do believe the books teach us about how the FNAF world works. Pardon my language. Anyway, pure bottled anger with a smiley face after it. I don't know. It's just giving a little bit of agony. It's giving a little bit of remnant. And I think that is a seed. And just for me, it does kind of add a little fuel to the fire that there is potentially a way for Edwin's memories, agony, whatnot, especially based on that poem that we just read in the previous one, that it could still have some influence over the building, the way that we've been talking about with Fiona, like I said before. This is from Freddy in Space 2. I'm not gonna be honest, I'm not very educated on Freddy in Space 2. So if there are any further connections that I should be making from there, of course, let me know in the comments. This is where it really starts to get interesting. This is where I came into the into the picture. Elevators can't be trusted. Take the stairs, fixing elevators. There's a lot here. First of all, just elevators can't be trusted. Take the stairs pushes you directly to ruin because of the elevator ending, obviously, right? Which really pushes us towards the idea that that is the canon ending and not the Scooper ending, which doesn't bode well for me. I really want the Scooper ending to be the canon ending, but I'm comfortable, of course, with the elevator ending being the canon ending. It's the one that seems the most likely to be the ending. I just hope that we see that scooping room again. That's all. That's all I'm really saying, is I really hope we see that scooping room again. If we look in the hashtags here, what we're going to find is Betty Lou Oliver. And we will get to Betty Lou Oliver, but I do just want to go ahead and point out that this is what leans us back into Cassie and away from Edwin. Now, Murray's Costume Manor does also have some faulty elevators, so it's worth noting that elevators are also closely associated with specific parts of Secret of the Mimic, but I think, especially once we get the context of Betty Lou Oliver, we are going to be leaning in the direction of Cassie here. 20-year-old was on her last day at work when a plane crash caused her elevator to plummet 80 stories. She lived. There she is. And this is the hole left in the building. Anyway, she's survived from the longest height. She survived falling from the longest height in an elevator. Now, not only does this heavily suggest that Cassie survived her fall from the elevator in the End of Ruin, but it also really strongly solidifies the idea that all of this Leon Riskin stuff is absolutely related to a game that is going to take place post-Ruin. I'm going to let you listen to this entire song before I keep going on about my thoughts about this. Now you get 2 minutes of silence. Hopefully, an ad break isn't interrupting for you. Of course, YouTube Premium will take care of that, or an ad blocker. But if there is ever going to be an ad placement, I bet there's going to be one right before I press this button. If I had to guess. So that was the October 1st post. Moving on to October 5th, we just get a timestamp, 136, and a picture of a wrecking ball smashing into a wall. Now, frankly, there are a number of things that this could be referring to, but the song Demolition Inevitable is 1 minute and 36 seconds long. It's technically longer than that on the official version of YouTube, but it stops at 136 and then there are 2 to 3 seconds of silence after that. So I think it's just kind of that arbitrary extra amount of time to let the song end before it just abruptly cuts off. And also because YouTube does add a little bit of arbitrary time to every single YouTube video that you upload, which is something I don't understand. If somebody in the comments knows, or if somebody watching this knows, please tell me in the comments, because I'm not looking it up right now. And I'll forget about this. I'll remember when I'm editing, not want to look it up when I'm editing. Anyway, I became intimately aware of this fact when I uploaded my full interactive audiobook version of VIP which I will have linked here or and in the description if you want to listen to VIP and play it while listening to it. It's a fully interactive audiobook that's uploaded to YouTube. I had every single timestamp listed throughout the video, and when I uploaded it to YouTube, every single timestamp was wrong because of this like arbitrary amount of time that YouTube added to my video. It was like 11 extra minutes or something. So I had to take the whole video down. I had to take the timestamps from the YouTube video, plug those into my Premiere project, even though they were in the Premiere project wrong, to make up for the difference that YouTube was adding. And luckily I was like, this only works if it's the same amount of YouTube time added every single upload, and it is. So it works. The audiobook works. But so personally, I think this is just pointing us to the song Demolition Inevitable, but I do want to point out that in the comments someone does give this other explanation that says the spooky Halloween ambience on Steel Wool's page at minute 136 shows Shattered Glamrock Freddy, which is notable. And what's playing is the FNAF sister location Crumbling Dreams Belora's theme, which I do think is interesting for a reason that I will talk about after we've gone through everything, if I actually remember it. But if I don't, then just yell at me in the comments. Then also they let you know that at minute 55:43, Inevitable Demolition is playing, and it's exactly 1 minute and 36 seconds long. And they also point to the Pizzaplex Demolition, which I don't think is a crazy call-out reference point, especially considering that it seems fairly understood that this is all leading up to a sequel to Security Breach. October 7th, it just says today. Just hashtags, nothing more, ellipses, simply little blue words. And I don't know if this has any sound. It does. It seems to be answering our question from yesterday. Sorry, that was probably a bit of a jump scare. Hopefully I lowered the volume there. I haven't read through these comments, so I don't know. Oh, little blue words, huh? Interesting. Five Nights at Freddy's sister location. Not a terrible call out. I think it was just kind of giving us more, right? There's a little bit more. Especially considering he then went on to post Demolition Inevitable full version draft 1. Happy to share the full version. These low distant impacts you can hear in the background are actually created by an old piano sustain pedal, filtered and amplified. So this is very interesting. So now let's listen to this. Okay, beautiful. So that was full version draft 1. If there are any secrets that you heard in there that you think are interesting, please let me know. Now, of course, there are all kinds of little things in there that are different from the final version that you could pick out and say, oh, I wonder if this is alluding to this or that. But I am taking Leon at his word here that this really is just the first draft of the song and there isn't really anything secret hidden in there that we're supposed to be finding. It's just asking us to kind of think about that title, Demolition Inevitable. And you could also be thinking of the context that we originally heard the song in, where it's very heavily related to Michael. But I am going to give my interpretation of this, where I'm just kind of looking at the song itself or the name of the song itself. I personally am choosing to interpret this as every single time someone tries to revive Freddy's, make a new Freddy's location, demolition is inevitable. It will always come crumbling down. All the way back in Secret of the Mimic, it happened. It happened at Fall Fest. It was, it has happened with all of the FNAF locations. Something happened. Demolition is inevitable. That's the kind of end all be all of it. And that's really where I'm choosing to take this. But of course, I'd love to hear your opinions. Hey, Editing Nervous here. And a thought that I had after I filmed this was the idea that if Abyss, the game, is set after Ruin, then it could be that the demolition that was scheduled to take place at the Pizzaplex but then was halted could be resumed during the course of the game. So October 7th is over. This may very well not be related to anything. I don't know. Video game royalty-free music from the Midnight Strawberries collection. But the reason that I'm going to stop and look at it anyways, it says stop snooping around the hashtag. No truffles in here. So like there's nothing for you to like dig around and find. Now, like I said, I don't know if this is a part of all of this or if this is just Leon showing some of the other work that he's been doing. But I am going to call out that the name here is The Perfect Escape Plan. And if we are following Cassie as she has gotten out of the elevator and survived, theoretically, she would be trying to escape. She is also the main character of the interactive novel Escape the Pizzaplex. And there is this, I don't want to call it heterochromia because it's just two colors, but combined, but it's giving. Okay. It's giving that same energy that we've been getting, where it does seem that there are these two forces at work here and color theory and all of that stuff. I'm not going to go into it. I get it. I get it. But we are going to listen to this, but this may very well be like absolutely nothing. So
I'm going to tell him.
Don't you dare.
Okay, I'm pausing this one because I just realized that the monkey kind of also has spirally eyes, in my opinion. All right. So that's that one. There are things about it that hearken to the idea of Cassie trying to escape the Pizzaplex, or even just the control of Glitch Trap / whatever influences are coming after her in this next potential game. Like I said, the spiral eyes just give me Mimic vibes. People in the comments were talking about Midnight, kind of alluding to Midnight Motorist, but I think that's getting a little Mr. Hippo for me. Small, too many details. So we are going to move on from October 9th. I don't really have anything else to say about that, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Here is another one that I have definitely listened to. This was, I think, the second time that I came back to this. It's possible that this was like my whole first thing and I just totally missed this one. Because I think when I first was going through this, I wasn't logged into Twitter because I thought my account had been deleted, quite frankly. I think it got like reinstated or something, because I swear I would type in my username and everything and it would just be like, that account doesn't exist. I don't use Twitter because I hate Elon Musk with a fiery hot passion. So anyway, moving on. October 10th. This is a really exciting day. The Forbidden Nocturne full original version 1. Use headphones, lock the doors, trust no one. One thing I'm going to ask you to pay attention to here is there are a lot, in my opinion, nods to Sister Location. Obviously the music references. And I was also getting the vibes all the way back in the beginning, Forgotten Names and Faces. Because we've been getting a lot of Sister Location kind of imagery, and it wouldn't surprise me if maybe some of those Forgotten Names and Faces are characters like Ballora and so on and so forth. Now, I don't know how forgotten they are in the modern times. We do see some references to them. I think Forgotten Names and Faces could be referring to somebody else, but I'll go over that later. But that's another potential, and there are just a lot of little pieces that he's dropping here that harken back to sister location. So we're going to listen to this as well. And then you'll also see that there is a code here that we are going to have to look at. But we are going to listen to this first. And I am just going to give you a little bit of a jump scare warning here. That'll ruin it if you haven't heard it. Okay. But if I don't warn you and you were like doing something else, this may catch you off guard, especially if you are a headphone user. Now, it does say use headphones, lock the doors, trust no one. Let's go. No, I hate that. I love it, but I hate it. Now, I'll go ahead and just spoil this for you. The hashtags are the Unicode letters for hashtag. Okay, so there's not actually a secret in there, but kind of hilarious. Okay, real quick, what I want to say is like, obviously, this is listed as the Forbidden Nocturne full original version 1, just like Demolition Inevitable was. And this feels crazy. It could very well be that this was the original intended way that this is going to sound. It's just obviously very specific, and it would have had to have related to some kind of animation that was going to play. Yeah, was this originally meant as like a cutscene for the fake ending? The banging and crashing almost sound like something inhuman breaking in during some kind of melancholic moment, and the resulting fuzz almost sounds like it could be emitting from a broken TV, which I think is such a good call out. It also kind of sounds like maybe it's like a radio that is like switching through channels or something, but it does also sound like a TV. I'm not going to go back and try to replay it because I don't want to accidentally replay the like big bang and everything. But of course, go back, listen to it yourself. People are talking about the connections to FNAF World. I think it's highly unlikely we'll ever get a FNAF World 2, as much as I would love that, and I'm sure a lot of you would love that. I just don't really know if that's the way that we're going. But I think that any sort of connection to FNAF World is really another indication that we are going to be questioning what is reality and what is not, and or using digital somethings in order to affect things in the real world. As we move on, we're going to get maybe even more specific about what exactly we could be doing here, in my opinion. But I just love the lock the doors and trust no one kind of call out, because if we are going to be doing the sequel to Security Breach and Cassie is our main girl, and this is the aftermath of her fall in the elevator, it's very, very possible that Roxy, whom we hear at the end of that, calling for Cassie, is no longer trustworthy. We don't know. She could be compromised at this point. We don't know. We deactivated something in her that should have been protecting us, but she was seemingly able to override that in order to protect us at the end of the game. So I think that there could be a possibility that we could get some Escape the Pizzaplex kind of vibes from this, where Roxy seems to be our friend, but she becomes someone we can't trust. Or in general, maybe we become somebody who's untrustworthy. Maybe Cassie's untrustworthy. Maybe we play as Roxy. I doubt it. If you heard anything else, if you could make out anything in the radio, I really couldn't. But if you heard something, or if you want to take that in and like listen to it longer and let me know if you find anything, of course do. I also think it could be alluding to the fact that it seemed that Fiona's voice was able to come through a radio of some kind after her death. So it could be something like that. Someone trying to communicate with us through that, whether it is F10, maybe just the Mimic in general, Helpy, it could be Edwin, we don't know. And this is October 11th. Here is a clean and original version of the Forbidden Nocturne, or is it? Posted just a day later. It's a little bit longer. So we will now listen to that. I know this is a lot of listening, but I want you to have one video that has all of the stuff that we have so far fully played out. We're not just explaining it, but we're like fully playing it out. So this is his claim that this is actually the clean and original version of the Forbidden Nocturne, unlike the one that he had previously shown us the day prior. So you can see he's setting himself up to not be the most reliable narrator here, which could be a clue, could be something. That's really what I get out of this, is just that now Leon is telling us that stuff is original, but then maybe making us question whether or not it actually is, which leads us to the conclusion that there are things in there we should be listening for, which of course leads me to October 14th. So this caption lends a lot of credence to the idea that there has been some editing done to these so-called original versions or first drafts. But of course, you could read this as he made like a minor tweak before uploading it here. Okay, so as you heard, there was nothing terribly suspicious about that one. There is like a breath that you can hear at one part, which kind of reminds me of like Spring Trap Burn Trap vibes. Just the read that I get off of it, but it could be any number of things. Of course, this is once again a sister location song, which gives me the vibes that maybe we are going to be falling down to an area of the Pizzaplex that may be holding secrets related to Sister Location, which would not surprise me based on everything that we've kind of seen so far leading up to all of this. Of course, Baby was in Help Wanted 2 pretty prominently, all things considered, and that doesn't ever get fully explained. But personally, that's really all I have to say about this one. As always, if you have more thoughts, leave them in the comments. We're going to be moving on to the next, October 16th, 2025. Now, this one is another I'd put on the same level as The Perfect Escape Plan, where this is music from outside of his work on FNAF. But if we look at the hashtags, it does say some interesting stuff that I do think is worth pointing out. Michael Faherty and, give me a second on this one. Decyanoacetylene. I'm going to see how much I butchered that. Oh my God. Can I get it without the robot? Okay.
Diphenylacetylene.
That didn't feel better. I don't feel like that guy did it any better than I did. Right. Great. Okay. Well, whatever's going on there isn't working. Modern internet is a disease. David, you tell me.
Dicyanoacetylene.
I don't think anybody knows how to pronounce this word, quite frankly. I'm done. I don't know if there's anything else, but beware of smoking cyclists. I don't know. I mean, objectively, there's a smoking cyclist there, but there are some thoughts in the comments, so we'll read them now. Michael Faherty is a historical case of a man who was declared to have died by spontaneous combustion. So that may be worth, being mindful of. And, Michael is an all important name in Five Nights at Freddy's, of course. That chemical compound that I can't pronounce burns at one of the highest temperatures known. In my opinion, maybe another nod to Remnant. And then beware of smoking cyclists. Beware of the burning cycle repeating again is a very interesting interpretation of that. I think you could also point to the carousel. The carousel burns. It's also giving Ghost Rider, quite frankly, but ultimately, I think that those are all interesting call outs, and we will now listen to this. Okay. If you ask me, that's giving some Midnight Motorist vibes for real, which continues to kind of push in the direction of FNAF 6, which is interesting because everything else so far has been, in my opinion, heavily like geared towards either pointing at the very, very modern stuff or sister location. You can give me your thoughts, but I do think it's interesting. I mean, it's a vehicle. Midnight Cyclist, anybody. I mean, the theme of fire, it's always FNAF with the fire. I think that kind of does it for October 16th. If you have any other thoughts, I wonder what I want you to do with them. I don't know, something to ponder on. Moving on, October 21st. So this is interesting because, of course, Unstrung and Unhinged Secret of the Mimic OST with weird highlighted letters. We saw that with passive aggressive Leon Riskin. We also have this here with Unstrung and Unhinged Secret of the Mimic. What makes music scary? A sudden banging on the door in your ear might work the first time, but not in looping tracks. For me, church organs have a FYI-ing sound and huge potential. The medieval recall, the tone, the low frequencies, it's rad. Spacing. In Unstrung and Unhinged, notice the tempo the bass line follows. It's not triplets. It actually took me a while to figure it out and build the track around it. Of course, there are other elements too, like non-standard percussion, which you'll often hear in a lot of FNAF soundtracks. The Back to the Iron Lung beat concept was first born from a heavy metal appliance slam sound that had a surprisingly interesting rhythm. 9/8. Is that a time signature? I knew there was somebody down here that just was like pointing out all of these things, right? U true notmos with UTRUNOTMOST, which is what is the highlighted text here. And then Harry FYI-ing, FYI rad 9/8. Oh, yes. Now I'm starting to pick out the bigger picture. But these are like all of the key things in here. It does technically like say like you true, not most. It's almost a sentence, but like not really. I'm wondering if like by the end of this, we will have all of the letters that we need that will be unscrambled. It could be totally like off base there. Hera FYING. I don't understand this.
Hey, editing nervous here again. I figured it out. It's FYI in the middle of the word herring. So I think that there's really nothing to see here, actually. But let's move on.
There's also this weird spacing here, and this is not alone. You will find in later posts that there are even more weird spaces. So next is yet another, on October 21st, video game music from my store, also on streaming services that once again could have nothing to do with any of this. It is called Punching Bag by Leon Riskin. Why am I saying, yeah, Doug. Nervous, yeah. Yeah, they all are. And then, of course, let's look at these hashtags because they're getting odd. Namely, The Great Dictator, which is a reference to a 1940s satire of Adolf Hitler made by Charlie Chaplin and starring Charlie Chaplin. If I'm correct, it was his first speaking role in a movie. We were moving from silent films to talkies in this era. So, this movie is incredible. You can watch it free on Pluto TV if you want to watch it. But it's like one of my favorite movies of all time. Going to say this as a caveat, Charlie Chaplin, kind of scummy. Not the best person to women. There's some issues there. There's some what do you call them? Blind spots. But he was on the forefront of utterly mocking Hitler, and this movie gained a lot of controversy because of that. I mean, I suppose you could make the connection to the mimic here because the whole thing is that there's a mistaken identity issue between a Jewish barber and Adolf Hitler in the film, and that's where the big speech at the end of the movie comes into play. It's very possible that you've heard this speech before if you've never seen the movie. I'm like, I don't know exactly if it's not the mistaken identity kind of thing where there's like a doppelganger. Like if we're looking at doppelganger type stuff, I don't know. Another thing we have here is some Korean
It's Korean for hashtag. We're not going to linger on it.
that needs to be deciphered or translated. Oh my God. Guys, I'm trying to do serious research here. The Great Dictator is really the only hashtag that stands out to me. So let's listen to this. It's a little bit longer. So if I had to give that one an era, I would give it to FNAF 6 as well. If we move on to October 22nd, we'll see. I'm not going to listen to all of this, but it says all FNAF songs that contain the Watch Your 6 motif. It says, Leon, you're spoiling my new video. I don't remember John made a video about this stuff, if I missed it.
It's actually this video where John is making connections between Sister Location's music and Secret of the Mimic and otherwise the newer games. Also just talking about hints that Sister Location is going to become more prominent in general. I'll let you watch that video to get the full story, but I get it now. Bye-bye.
Now, again, I'm not going to go through all of this, but I will show you all of them. Watch Your 6, Vinta Black Desire 5, Last Breath, Where Dreams Die, A Gun and a Knife Fight V2, The Colder Stone V2, Supernova Journey A, Supernova Journey B, Night Drive with the Gang, Scrapyard Megalodon, Game Edit, Tales from the One-Eyed Cat Tavern, and then it goes straight from there to Secret of the Mimic stuff. And then, of course, this custom night from Sister Location. Mainly, what I find interesting is that it's making another major connection between Secret of the Mimic stuff and Sister Location stuff, which does, again, point me in the direction that we are going to see with these forgotten faces, the Sister Location animatronics. Watch Your 6, of course, does also mean, like, watch your back, like, you know, so it's just like another sort of indication that someone is untrustworthy and that we are in imminent danger. So, which isn't really unique for a FNAF game, but you get it. Now, moving on to October 23rd, here is a breakdown of the rhythm section from Back to the Iron Lung. Everything was born from that metal impact that sounded like a rhythm to me. Here is where we get into these other weird spaces that I am curious about. FNAF Secret of the Mimic, of course, all normal. But then invisible ink. So are these letters that are missing from invisible ink going to be relevant? As we move on, there will be more of this quote unquote invisible ink here. There's also just this possibility that we're getting trolled every time we see something like this. This is the PAX West stuff, which is like kind of another retweet. I honestly don't think that this one is really correlated with everything else. There's nothing in it that seems even like remotely related, but I will just call out that it's called Dopamine Level 9000 Plus. And there is like this like electricity orb, which you could say that there's something significant behind that. So I'll leave it at that, but there's nothing in the song. So we're just going to skip over the rest of that. If we move on to November 3rd, Winter is Coming, Stay. And you'll notice there's just some weird stuff going on here. We're getting in this one DD, fan. It's like a lot of different ways to say FNAF, obviously. And then Ice Cave. We'll listen to this, but the fact that this one is a reference to FNAF World, again, I don't think that this should shift us away from the sequel to Security Breach and like into some idea that we're going to get FNAF World 2. I don't think that's happening. I would love for it to happen. I could be proven wrong and I would be happy to be proven wrong, but at this juncture, I don't think that's what this is. I think any reference to FNAF World is just trying to remind us that there is a flip side. And for me, in my opinion, it's like the digital afterlife. But we're going to see some more stuff later that'll tie to that a little bit more. But I don't think that this means that we're getting FNAF World 2, and I'm so sorry about that. Let me make sure. Okay, this is back up. And we'll listen to this one. So once again, I don't hear anything standoutish in that. It gives me a little bit of like Ballora vibes because of that like music box theme in there. But I will say Frozen Time is something that we may need to be paying attention to because time becomes more prominently referenced as we go forward. So Tough Choices is next, November 5th. Dramedy, royalty-free music, stock music commercial, Love Over Diamonds, Leon Riskin. Now, I just said I was getting Volbora vibes, and this mannequin hand is giving me Mini Rena, right? A little. I mean, honestly, it's kind of even giving me Ballora's hand because she's got those very articulated, nice hands. But Love Over Diamonds. Now, I'm going to say what I say every single time. This is one of those royalty-free music things that he has that's not related to Five Nights at Freddy's at all. But putting it right after Frozen Time, where you're getting these sort of Ballora vibes, in my opinion. Um, you know, we are also seeing like this ring, this like wedding ring on a finger, on a hand that's reminiscent of the mini Rena. Well, I know the mini Renas don't have articulated hands, but you know what I mean? Like it's like looking like one of those like the little art mannequin guys. It's looking like that. But it reminds me of Allura. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay. As far as I'm concerned, nothing really crazy in there. It doesn't really give me the vibes of anything related to Five Nights at Freddy's. So if it is something, then I would just purely be looking at the picture here and maybe even just Love Over Diamonds. I mean, Tough Choices. I'm not going to linger too long on November 5th. You guys can say, of course, as I am want to beg you apparently to do, to overanalyze that even further. But I am instead going to move on to what I do find to be quite a fascinating one. And this was November 7th, 2025. This is the one that has got me the most out of whack because what do you mean, Leon? What are you actually doing here? This feels like a troll. If this is a troll, I'm mad about it because I'm like, come on, just keep putting hashtag in different languages you're saying. There's nothing in here. It's called Afterlife Full Version, the original name of this track. It was a nice experiment with a surprisingly catchy chorus and even more surprising C part. Sometimes with the right palette of instruments and sounds, the music creates its own path. And then we have just this utter mess. The only thing you could possibly do is count the spaces to figure out how many letters are in the word. And then just from there, you're what? Figure it out, I guess. And so I don't know what's going on here. I don't know if there's something I'm supposed to be seeing or understanding, but we do have Gnosis, which is Greek for knowledge. But this is Afterlife, and you'll notice that this picture is potentially very interesting, and that is because it is made up of a bunch of characters. Some of them are these little like rectangles, or like when the text like can't be recognized or whatever. But then there's these other letters that are in a specific font that I can't name right off the top of my head. I wish I could, but I just can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head. I'm wanting to say like Cooper Black, but I don't think that's it. Oh my god, I was so close though. I mean, come on. But it's in this sort of like retro style of font. I can't remember the name of it, but like that's what it's all made up of. Broadway. It's Broadway font. Okay, I figured it out. It's Broadway. This is the font, Broadway. If you brighten up the image, you can see it's all throughout the eyes and mouth, and this is Braille. And it translates to, thank you all the people who did this in the comments, because I didn't have to, but it translates to hello, death, smoke, and mirrors. Hello, death, smoke, and mirrors in Braille. This is the thing where I was reading Drowning recently. I'm going to be doing a video on Drowning soon, so stay tuned for that. And it's another one of these stories about VR and being trapped in a simulation. And there's this like shadowy figure that, you know, seems to have ties to the original FNAF lore. But it is another hint to me that there is a digital afterlife within FNAF. And yes, there is a high likelihood that a certain amount of criteria must be met for this to take place or for you to get here. But it's just really, really fascinating to me. And it seems like, and I do believe that we can, in the FNAF universe, people can tap into the digital afterlife. And characters on the living side of things, because this afterlife is digital, like are able to find pathways to communicate with these spirits. So Afterlife eventually became Underneath One, I think. Yeah, Underneath One, which is fascinating in its own right, correct? Underneath One is the afterlife. I just like, to me, it feels like very obvious, but just in case, I'm just going to say it 400 times. I'm going to be really honest with you. I don't know if there's anything to find here. If you think there is, let me know. I haven't seen anybody figuring it out, but that doesn't mean that it is not out there. But anyway, the secret message in here, hello, death, smoke, and mirrors, on top of the fact that this is originally called Afterlife, but ended up being Underneath One for you going like layers deeper inside of FNAF World. Just, I mean, it just all really solidifies the idea for me that way these VR, AR, video game, whatnot experiences and so on and so forth are inseparably entwined with the afterlife, with the quote unquote souls. I don't really know how you want to quantify that stuff, but like with those things. Moving on to November 8th, 2025. I totally forgot about this little excerpt. Who knows where it's from? Gloves Off by Leon Riskin. This one is exactly a minute long. We'll listen to see if we recognize where it comes from. Okay, so now would be a good time to lock in your guesses before we find out where it's from. Oh, there it is. Okay, moving on, November 11th. Here is one of my favorite tracks from Mechanical Magic album. Now, he's pushed us towards listening to the Mechanical Magic stuff in the past. This is interesting that it is like a Mechanical Fishy, Junkyard Scavengers, which is kind of giving me Fazbear Frights energy, if I have to be honest with you. I'm not going to play this one specifically because this is obviously just from the Spotify album. So if you want to listen to Junkyard Scavengers, of course you can. I'll play a little bit of it. I just don't really think there's necessarily anything there. But if anything, just Mechanical Magic, I think, is something that he's been pointing us towards. So I think that's worth it. Also, on November 11th, he posted about this boxing game that he made music for. None of the hashtags really suggest that this is related to our Into the Abyss teasers. Skip to the next. I've been walking around with this melody stuck in my head for years before I had the chance to finally sit down and develop it. Usually if an idea is reminding you it exists without any notes, it's a good sign. Again, I don't know that this is related either, so I'm not going to listen to this one all the way through, but Royal DNA, the fact that he's pointing to that reminds me of Princess Quest. I think that that's enough. This one, on November 14th, just says Bayonet. It's a minute-long song. Okay, so I just went through the comments. This is A Gun and a Knife Fight from Freddy in Space 2. Yet another reference to Freddy in Space 2. I don't really know what that could mean beyond just the otherworldliness of things, but this could be a red herring trying to throw us off, so who knows. All I'm going to say about this one, because again, there's no like hashtags that are giving me any indication that this is about FNAF, but Life Stories is, this stuff is like the same font as the Forgotten Names and Faces font. I think it looks very, very similar, if not the same. This is really long. Which sounds incredible, but this is a soundscape. Don't really think that there's anything here, but the next one from November 20th, 2025, Long Way From Home, lost in a surreal, pixelated space, giving me some vibes. Produced in 2022, taken from my Strawberry video game music, which we have heard a little bit from before. Original soundtrack is a lot of science and technology. That's irrelevant. Might not be. But you will see what really catches my eye about this more than anything else is that we have these different colored letters again. So if you wanted to add them to your list of different colored letters, it's PASS. And this one actually does spell pass. I'm going to be honest, I'm just going to play like a sample of this one and we're going to move on. But please go listen to the full thing. It's reminding me of Princess Quest. It's just giving a little bit of a vibe of Princess Quest. I'm going to say that. And then somebody in the comments said specific notes from 158 and 2 sound similar to that one part in Demolition Inevitable. So, oh, you know what? They're talking about the same motif that I'm talking about. They're relating it to Demolition Inevitable, which I also hear. So, both things to point out. Okay. So, mainly, it's just those different letters, which we see, immediately again on the next November vibes. We have stones make no splash on a frozen lake, which I think is interesting. And then Steven Erickson, which we'll look into. But this is spectacular metamorphosis, which all by itself is an interesting thing, especially if we're talking about the idea of like maybe a metamorphosis that Cassie is having after her fall. But again, we have these different colored letters, SCARME. Scar me. Okay, there we go. Someone solved it for me. I don't have to think about it. Stones make no splash in a frozen lake is a quote from Midnight Tides, a novel by Steven Erickson. Midnight. So we're going back to that theme, which makes me feel like I should issue an apology to that person before who I was saying was give a stretch. When they mentioned midnight, I said it was giving a little Mr. Hippo for me, if you remember that. Maybe not. Maybe I was being a little quick to judge. So let's look up Midnight Tides by Steven Erickson and see what that's about. And you know what? We'll listen to the song while we're doing it. Let's double duty this. This is reminding me of an unused track from Ruin. One of these two. I think it's our. Do you remember? Or I remember. It's not like the same notes or anything, but it just reminds me. That reminds me of that. I'm not going to keep listening to that, but let's read what Midnight Tides is about. It's a fantasy novel by Canadian author Steven Erickson, the 5th volume in his epic fantasy series. These tribes are set to meet with a delegation from the kingdom of Lether to negotiate a treaty. Meanwhile, the city of Lether is preparing for the fulfillment of a prophecy that declares the king will become emperor at the 7th closure. Interesting. Just to summarize, I read a little bit more about it, but it seems like maybe it's another reference to betrayal and things like that. There's this like tension between two factions or whatever of people. I'm not going to read more about it right now, but the midnight thing is important to point out, in my opinion. These are the letters so far. Thank you, Overhaul. I'm just thinking maybe there's going to be an anagram or something at the end of all this. Take a walk outside from my window, November 23rd. No descriptions here for anything. From my window, take a walk outside is kind of giving later that night vibes. This is lo-fi energy. I'm just not gonna. 1,000 Light Years Apart on Spotify and Friends. Transatlantic. We've got some like sci-fi vibes going on here, but we will listen. Oh. It's giving very Princess Questy vibes with a yellow motif. Interesting. I mean, she is giving it works. It works as a Princess Quest reference. We'll just say that. Here's a weird one. It's a buried draft taken from a pitch I did for an experimental animation. What is wrong with me? Animation pilot for back in 2009. Experimental soundtrack video game composer. Again, no real indicator here that this is a part of the ongoing stuff, but keep listening. Okay, I guess I can't. Yeah, okay. Very much just experimental. I don't think this has any indication that's a part of all this, so we're going to move on. How cold is it? Stone cold. Now, this is interesting. Again, we have some sort of singled out words, S and C here, but again, I just don't know. Okay, Scott Cawthon, hilarious. Though this is a reference to FNAF World. And I'll let you hear some of it. And we have been seeing a lot of references to like frozen lakes, frozen bodies of water or whatever. It's almost giving me the vibe that like the lake that we see in FNAF World with Old Man Consequences, maybe that's frozen over because something has happened. I don't know. If this is a reference to anything, it's that. Again, I'm sorry I'm kind of speeding through these, but like this is not related. This is an advertisement and everything. Okay, years gone by. Okay, this is where we start getting into the other era of things. Years gone by, time is like a bullet train. This is where Leon Riskin starts talking a lot about time. So I'm going to come in the comments, see if anybody's saying anything. Desolate Hope, background music. Interesting. There is also a lantern here and a person sitting by a tree, which we do know to be related to FNAF stuff. Welcome to the advanced mode from the album Death to the Bit Crusher. Video game music. Doesn't immediately give me vibes of anything, and there's no singled out letters. It is a little bit giving FNAF World, I guess, but I don't know. That's a repost. Okay, this one seems like we're getting back into it, maybe. December 29th, 2025. First draft. Can I read? First draft for Drag Me to the Crusher. It was a much more experimental and a bit all over the place, but you have to appreciate the drama and the wicked metal drums. Drag Me to the Crusher, nothing singled out here, but if we come down in here, it says no tags left anymore. FN A, and then there is no F given. Not really anything crazy in there. We'll listen to it. Okay, so once again, nothing terribly like fascinating or revolutionary about listening to that, but of course, it is yet another reference to sister location. So we do keep going back sort of in a cycle of like the new stuff, the sister location, FNAF world, in the kitchen, see you Monday. Stuff gets stuffed. And then here we go. It's going to be a busy year. Synesthesia, Return of the Black Bloom. This is like the big thing that made me go, okay, it's like I'm ready to like actually make a video about this, or at least kind of talk to you guys about it, because we really got something that feels like a genuine teaser for what is coming up. So I'll let you guys watch this if you haven't already. So cool. I'm going to go through this full screen for me, but like, obviously there's like a little piece of me over here. A little piece of me. Because I'm right here. First, you'll see there's like a hard hat on some wood here. We're going through a cave of some sort as we move through. This is like a pallet of wood, like maybe it was once more of a floor. But everything's very dilapidated. You'll see down here the mushrooms that we saw in the caves, in Security Breach and Ruin. There's some things like coming off the ceiling here. I don't know if these are like related to construction or what, but they're very interesting to say the least. If you know what those are, please let me know. We're going through this like sort of broken up wall. We see a lot of these tubes that we know very well from Security Breach and Ruin, the Fiona Wires of Doom, if you will. And then there is this plant growing that we keep going on, the black bloom, if you will, that is growing amidst all of this place you wouldn't imagine. Like the light is coming through, but it's flickering. So I don't know if it's artificial light or if it's just like the way that things are passing. I don't know. So very, very, very fascinating. Love that. I feel like that is the true first teaser for this Abyss project. There's people making these connections between the locations, how they look very similar asset wise. I see it. There are even people in the comments of this who are making the connections to these assets being very, very similar and the moods being very, very similar. But this obviously looks like the dilapidated Pizzaplex vibes, right? Return of the Black Bloom, if that is some kind of media, I'm not aware of it. But of course, it's always going to be giving agony for me. They could be maybe exploring like the actual, or confirming at least like the existence of like agony as like a genuine thing in the games. There is somebody in here, giving us the dictionary definition of synesthesia, which is one of the hashtags up here. Then right after this, the very next tweet is, then the heart of the rose opened for him, exposing a yellow dazzle of light, and all thought was swept away on a wave of wonder. Before I even move forward, the heart of the rose opening, exposing a yellow dazzle of light is one reminding me of Princess Quest because she's like the little yellow sprite in this like dark area. But also it could be like a positive memory or something like that, because it says all thought was swept away on a wave of wonder, which literally sounds exactly like what happens when we see the Brazil ending of FNAF Ruin. So I'm just going to put that out there. Okay, I did go through the comments a little bit and was reminded that this is in fact a quote from Stephen King's The Dark Tower. I did pull up the Reddit for this. Please explain the rose symbolism to a newbie. The field of roses is the manifestation and a gift from the life force to an almighty god and serves as a shield to the Dark Tower, which is the manifestation of the god. And one cannot exist without the other. Basically, it's saying it symbolizes divine hope and divine encouragement, hope, and a portal to the Dark Tower, the central nexus of the multiverse. So if this is a reference to the FNAF stuff and not just some random tweet, then it could very well be saying that, like, maybe in Abyss we are going to be exploring the intersection of the digital afterlife and our world. Moving on to January 22nd, 3/4 of fear or 6/4 of doom. Shrug. I think these are time signatures. So maybe that 9/8 we saw earlier is a time signature. I don't know enough about time signatures, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. I had these few bars of a grim waltz beat with 3 anvil hits at the end of each phrase, had it scribbled at the back of my head for a few years until there was a chance to create a carousel theme. I'm glad it survived, unlike the 95% of tiny, undocumented ideas that fade without a trace. This is another Stephen King quote. I think a writer's notebook is a great way to immortalize bad ideas. Carousels are time loops with extra steps. So we're back to talking about the time travel-y kind of vibes. Well, listen. Sorry. I wish with all my heart that I could just scroll and have the music still play. Anyway, you guys get it. It's the carousel thing. I do have my thoughts about how, like, time travel in the FNAF universe works, and I've talked about them a little bit before when I talked about Return to the Pit and Into the Pit. You can find those videos. But basically, I don't know that if there are time loops, there are things that the quote unquote soul spirits, whatever they are experiencing. I do believe that there is very obviously a way to manipulate the mind in such a way that it truly like in the FNAF world, that it truly believes that it has gone back in time, that it is really for real experiencing something that happened in the past once again. And so I do think you can manipulate a memory. I think you can manipulate those things, but I'm not looking at this stuff as literal time travel. I hope that that is clear. But that is the most recent thing we have.
Okay, so before I was able to get this video uploaded, Leon has tweeted even more, and there is some more information that I do want to cover that I couldn't verify at the time of the original filming, but now am able to verify. And that is that there is a second account that has hit the ARG. So let's get into it. And chat is here with me this time. Chat wasn't here for the rest of the video, but chat's here now. So we'll have some help potentially in decoding some of this stuff. Okay, so the last thing that we talked about, video us, was the Doomsday Ride thing. So moving up, first we get an ad, but then we get to, you've got to love the M4OOS. Everything is changing, don't smell the flowers. And frankly, I wish that I had filmed this the moment that these tweets went out, because there were 2 tweets prior to this that seem to be deleted now that first said to smell the flowers for sure. And then this was the third one. Everything is changing, don't smell the flowers. If you were a homie and you saw that stuff, I'll try to find it so that it's on the video so that you can see it if somebody did capture it when it happened. I don't remember if I took a screenshot of it or not. It said, enjoy the music and don't forget to smell the flowers. Then it just said, enjoy the music. And then it said, everything is changing, don't smell the flowers. But all 3 of them had the same hashtag, Octothorpe. Interesting stuff. There's also a piece of music here called Against All Odds that I have heard, but let's first search Google for this. Oh, another term for the pound sign. Hilarious. Okay. First of all, London, yes, I thought of it as the music started playing. I was like, oh, I bet the M400S is a synth. A synth. A synth. Smells beautiful. Against all odds, with this kind of music is just kind of giving me a reunion of some type. Maybe this could have been an alternate track for Ruin. This could also be a track for understanding that Roxy and Cassie both made it against all odds. Like Cassie survived the elevator fall and Roxanne Wolf was able to get to her. Oh, somebody even made a comparison between Secret of the Mimic Poisonous Kiss and this track. Christ alive. I can kind of hear it. Won't say any more about that. If you have more thoughts, of course, leave them. We're not in the right... This is where I'm meant to be. I don't know how long we've been here. I'm so sorry. Okay, the second thing that we really need to look at is this secondary account. 000X5F. This account kind of popped up out of nowhere at the beginning of the year. It only follows Leon Riskin, and Leon Riskin follows it back. On January 2nd and January 3rd, it replied to "In the kitchen, see you Monday" tweet. This is the reply. It's just like a dot. It said null. It gave us a dot. And then it gave us dump log O_1. Sorry, let me go back here. I keep clicking on stuff. I don't like Twitter. Is that abundantly clear? Dump log O_01 46 6C 6F 6F 72 blah blah blah, so on and so forth. The replies underneath here are looking at this as if it is an ARG account, and there was a bizarre link to a completely black YouTube video that was like hours and hours long. I think it was like 12 hours of just nothing. And it replied this on the big thing, the trailer that we talked about earlier in the video. This is the link to the video. I'm not going to pull it up because it literally is nothing, but you can follow it. On January 22nd, we got a very interesting video, and I'm going to go ahead and give everybody in chat just a headphone warning right now, because this is not a pleasant thing to listen to. It's intriguing, to say the least. So we're going to go ahead and listen to this now, and headphone users be warned. So you guys hear it, right? It's like a screaming and then some like banging or something. Next, these two are really in conjunction with each other. They put out a poll, 4, 5, 6, or 7. 5 won pretty overwhelmingly. Jocko talks about this in his video that he uploaded recently, saying that maybe 5 won because of Five Nights at Freddy's. Kind of makes sense. But that prompted the account to then tweet out the next day 5555555. But what was most interesting is when the account changed its cover photo to this. This is a screenshot, a very glitched screenshot of the computer from Secret of the Mimic. So ultimately what we have here is very definitively something that is FNAF related. Around the same time that Scott has confirmed via Daco's charity stream that there is a sequel in the works, not a 3, a 2. Well, I was wrong. And as I disclaimed at the beginning of this video, Leon Riskin has come out to confirm that the latest tweets from his Twitter are not about a FNAF game proper, but a FNAF fan game. He doesn't specify what he means by latest, so it could just be the stuff that started in January with the trailer. However, he has been deleting older tweets than that, including the first tweet that was about forgotten names and faces. So it's really hard to tell at this point what he was tweeting that would be related to a potential new FNAF game that we know is in production based on what Scott Cawthon said in Daco's charity stream versus what Leon Riskin is posting in relation to this FNAF fan game. I'm going to assume that at the very least, everything posted in the new year is related to the fan game, so that would make the trailer and everything after that bunk. Now, obviously, that is a little disappointing, especially considering how long I spent on this video, and that's why I'm uploading it anyway, because I did put the time into it, and we can still use the information here to help us maybe uncover some information about this fan game that, based on the trailer, looks like it would be a fun fan game, all things considered. I also just want to say, while I was filming this, I did say, though I think I cut it out, that I thought it was weird that this particular ARG would be happening on Twitter when usually Scott would upload things to his own website or Steelwool would make a website or the things would be uploaded to YouTube. However, with it coming from Leon Riskin, I really did believe that it was like a trustworthy source. But even in saying that, I hope it's clear that I do not condone for anybody to go over to Leon Riskin's pages and give him any grief over this. It was an oversight. It was a bit of a misstep, but we can move on now. He's clarified, and I super appreciate him doing so. I honestly still think that my theorizing in this wrap up could apply to the upcoming FNAF title release, so I'm still going to include it, and we're going to jump into that now. So I'm going to pop back up into full screen now and give you some of my final thoughts about this. I think it's pretty clear that from everything that we've gotten so far that we are looking at a sequel to Security Breach. Go ahead and let me know if you disagree with that in the comments. I don't think this is about FNAF World 2. I think it's about connecting the ideas introduced in FNAF World to the modern games. I think that we are finally going to get some sort of interaction between Cassie, maybe even and her dad, but definitely with Cassie and some of these quote unquote spirits that still linger within the Pizzaplex. And I said this earlier that I have more sort of ways to go with the Edwin angle of everything. I was talking about before how there's a possibility that his digital consciousness is also in this Pizzaplex somehow. That's less likely to me, but I'm just kind of throwing things at the wall here. This is a nervous breakdown. This is what we do here. But I do think that there is a possibility that in some capacity that Edwin has survived because the afterlife is smoke and mirrors, right? So it's his memories, his consciousness, I don't know, however you want to call it, is still living on in something that Cassie will be able to find and potentially communicate with. Maybe Roxy will have some answers for us there. But the question is, a lot of this other stuff really does seem focused on Cassie. So why would that poem, right, be about Edwin when that seems to be kind of what I would consider maybe the only thing theoretically consider most of everything else is really heavily pointing towards Cassie having these sorts of experiences with the VR. Maybe she thinks that she's escaped the Pizzaplex, but she really hasn't. But as I said earlier, right, that poem, when you read it in full, can relate to Edwin, but really nothing else we got really points to Edwin. A lot of it seems a lot more focused on Cassie in particular, and just the idea of us going straight from Ruin into whatever this new game is. And it's attaching it a lot to that. Now, we are getting some Secret of the Mimic stuff, but that's hard to attach to Edwin when we know that the Mimic, of course, is a big component to the Ruin game. So, of course, any sort of pointing at the Secret of the Mimic could just be talking about the Mimic itself and not necessarily Edwin. But you're forgetting that the very first thing that we saw is forgotten names and faces. And who is the forgotten name and face? It's Edwin. It's Edwin. He is the one who Fazbear Entertainment has completely attempted to erase from all of this. And of course, I still see the connections, obviously, to Sister Location, Forgotten Names and Faces. It's plural. But that main forgotten name and face, okay, feels so Edwin to me. And I genuinely believe that this Into the Abyss game of whatever it is, this presumably Security Breach sequel, which is where I'm hedging my bets, is going to be about Cassie
understanding the mimic in that way, learning something about the origins of all of this Edwin and all of that stuff. Who knows exactly, like, how we're going to get to that stuff. But if I had to guess, based on a lot of the other stuff that we were seeing in these teasers, my guess would be that Cassie is going to be utilizing VR and or AR to visit these memories. But that is just where my head is at. I believe that this game we will see Cassie down deeper into the depths of all of this stuff, maybe fully in these caves. But I do believe she's going to have the Vanny mask. I believe that she's going to have Roxy, whether or not we can trust Roxy. And she's going to find a way to explore these memories, and that will allow her to get some sort of information about why the mimic is the way it is. And based on the way that we see her fixing and trying to care for the animatronics on the surface, perhaps she can help and deactivate the mimic. Of course, this is all speculation right now. This is as speculative can be at a certain point. But I would love to hear if you agree with me on this, if there's anything you don't agree with me about this. I know maybe that was a lot to get to where I am right now, but you see why we had to go there, right? I needed you to hear all of these motifs that lead us to the past, the connections to FNAF World that suggests we are dealing with a digital afterlife here, the idea that Edwin is somehow involved. But anyway, it's time for my wrap up and final thoughts. And oh my God, did you skip ahead? I'm genuinely disappointed. To those of you who didn't skip, welcome. And to those of you who did skip here, shame. For shame. My question to you is, do you have any interest in Chica's secret party? Does that interest you at all? Because I've seen some videos on it, and every single one is totally mad at it and writing it off as the new era of Scott troll games. Instead of making a troll game, he's put this in the ultimate guide. And do you care for me to analyze it? Because I keep thinking about it and being I think there are tons of connections you could make here where maybe it's giving us some kind of clues to something, but or trying to speculate on whether or not that is something that's ever going to come out as a game. Are you interested in that at all? Do you have thoughts on Chica's secret party at all? Or do you, similarly to the consensus, because the consensus that the YouTube community over this has reached is just that it's kind of like a troll situation, and maybe at some point Scott intended to release something like this, but it didn't happen. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Are we interested at all, or no? That would be just silly for me to even bother talking about. Because if the consensus is that it's nothing, then I don't really, I don't want to sit over here and be like, no, guys, it's really something. I promise. But if you guys are man, I really wish somebody would actually try to look into this. I will say I haven't watched all of Gibby's stream where he's I'm solving this or else. Let me know. Let me know if that's something that's interesting to you. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, make sure to leave those thoughts in the comments below. And while you're down there, you might as well hit the like button and subscribe if you're not already to become a part of the nervous system. I upload new videos every week, usually, and go live on Wednesdays and Fridays, usually. But if you can't wait, there are videos on the screen right now just for you. Okay, bye. Okay, bye.